Welcome back to my channel for a special lens review. Namely, I want to review an L-mount lens here. It's from Viltrox. It's calculated for full-frame sensors and its focal length is 16mm. So we are talking here about an ultra-wide lens. Its widest open aperture is an f1.8 and I will come to all the specifications very quickly in the course of the video. I will not do an unboxing of this lens because I already unboxed it. It's already mounted here on my Leica SL3 Reporter edition, and I also already shot this lens intensely. And making the caveat that I've not shot all ultra-wide lenses on planet Earth, of course, but I think I can safely claim this is highly likely for L-mount cameras, one of the best ultra-wide lenses you can shoot. Let's kick this off. If you have not yet subscribed to my channel, please do so, subscribe, hit the notification bell, support my work. Many thanks for that. All right. Let me do some housekeeping first. Viltrox sent this lens to me for free. The launch date for this product is today. In the moment in time when I'm filming this, these are the last clips because I really spent time with this lens shooting it. I will also focus in this video a lot on sample images and not so much on technical specifications, because I think this will make us all smarter if we have a look into real footage. And they sent this to me for free, but I'm not affiliated with Viltrox. I do not get paid by them, but I can keep the lens. That, of course, does not cloud my judgment about the lens, but for the sake of completeness and honesty, I want to mention this here. So let's get the box out of the way. We don't need it for the rest of the video. And let's have a look at that lens. And first of all, I should say, it's not a confession, but it's a true statement. I'm not a big fan of ultra-wide lenses. For me, typically, end of story where I feel comfortable is 20-21mm, like here. So this is the Super Aposumicron SL. 21mm is one of my most favorite lenses of all times in the Leica SL system. And 21mm is a field of view I feel really comfortable with. 16mm, I have a bunch of 16mm lenses, but very often they just rest in the glass vitrine. I don't like the perspective of 16mm a lot, but here I should say, and you will see in the sample images, I enjoyed big time shooting it. This is really a gorgeous lens, and the field of view and all the specifications will be brought to your attention in a moment. It also looks good on the Leica SL3. If you look here, the proportions are right for my camera, and it also has here a display which we are going to explore in a moment. Let's talk about elements on the lens first. So first of all, we have here a very bright display. This display is so bright, you can easily read it in daylight and sunlight. And when I was shooting the lens, I really liked that a lot. It reminds me a lot in the display you have on Nikon C cameras, but with a very important difference. What's always annoying in the Nikon C system is that the display switches off very quickly in terms of power saving mode. And here it just stays on. So you have the information all the time visible. We have here a switch to switch between autofocus and manual focus. This is manual focus. This is autofocus, and you get also the indication in the display. So here on the right-hand side, you see there is autofocus with a yellow background. If I switch into manual focus, this information field switches into MF. Have a look. Here we go. You also get here a depth of field indication. And if I turn the aperture ring, which is this one here, you will see how the depth of field increases. So I'm currently at widest open f1.8. If I start to stop down, you see that yellow bar at the top becoming wider and wider. And that means the depth of field is increasing, of course. And the aperture ring is very solid. The whole construction of the lens is super solid. It's a metal construction. It feels very valuable in hand, and it is also weather sealed. I come to that in a moment. And the aperture ring has clicks. Listen to the sound. Not sure you can hear it, but I can hear it. And you can also deactivate the clicks here if you want to have smooth switching apertures in video filming. Let's switch it and deactivate the click. And now the aperturing is buttery smooth, but with sufficient resistance. Very nicely solved here on that lens. Let's go back to clicks. We are not in video filming mode here. In the middle of that display here, you find a distance measurement going on. And if I focus here on Jennifer, let me do this quickly. Then it indicates me the distance here, 0.59 meter from Jennifer towards the focal plane of the camera. So that is also very nice. If I focus on the background, let's quickly do this. It switches into infinity focus here. So that is basically an electronic way of showing you what the distance is in focusing currently if you look at the lens on the top side. We also have here customizable function buttons. I'm not aware of any way how I could customize this in a Leica SL3. Because under customize controls, you only can customize the buttons which are on the camera body. So I have no idea if there is any way to customize this. Maybe there's a way to do this via a docking station or a USB-C cable, like we have it, for instance, in the Sigma world. And then via your Mac or your computer, you can customize these buttons. I have no idea at this point in time how to do it. And they are currently without any function for me. So if I push FN1, nothing happens here, no exposure lock, no nothing. If I push FN2, nothing happens, but the buttons are also not in the way, and maybe in the future there is a way to actually assign a function to it, or I have not found it so far. That doesn't discount what I'm going to tell you about this lens. And in terms of lens elements, that's basically it. So you have here the click activate or deactivate button. You have the autofocus manual focus switch button. You have function buttons, which I cannot use at this point in time. You have an aperturing and a display, and the display shows you the distance. Here we go. Now it's 0.58 meter from the focal plane to Jennifer. And since this is an ultra wide angle lens, if I focus at the background, it will switch to infinity focus. Simple like that. So you have a lot of information. And you can use this, of course, in combination with the top display here, where you also have essential information in terms of depth of field and aperture chosen and shutter speed, ISO and exposure value, what have you. So this is nicely done. I want to quickly talk about weather sealing. Let's do a hot swap. Let's unmount this lens here quickly. I want to show you the rubber sealing here. If you look here, this is even in red. And the lens is fully dust and splash water sealed, and it also sits in a very solid way on the Leica SL3 body here. I need a lot of force to actually get it mounted, and immediately you see in hot swap the display kicks in again and starts to display information here. And this is really solid on the camera body. There is not a tiny little play here with this lens, the way it is mounted to my Leica SL3 Reporter. So that's very nice. And by the way, coming back to distance measurement, if I switch here into manual focus and turn the focus ring, then you will see here actually distances, you see. And the minimum focusing distance, if we go here all the way to the left-hand side, is 0.27 meter. And the maximum magnification you get with this lens is 0.1, so 10%. It's definitely not a macro lens, but you know, it will be enough for a little bit of close-up shooting. And 0.27 meters is the minimum focusing distance. If you go to the widest open aperture and focus at the minimum focusing distance, let's go back here to autofocus, then you also get a pretty shallow depth of field. And it looks quite nice. Let me take one picture of Jennifer here. Let's go to her face and have a look at that. This is pretty pleasant. If we switch to magnification here, look at how soft the background becomes. And I will show this to you in a bunch of images later when we go into sample images. Let me quickly go through the other specifications of the lens. So ultra wide focal length, 16mm. Has a wide angle view in terms of viewing angle of 105.6 degrees. So this is truly a lens which is made for landscape, for architecture, maybe also for reportage, what have you. We have an internal focus mechanism, so there is nothing in terms of lens tube coming in or out when I focus here and half press the shutter button. That is also something I typically appreciate. Helps, by the way, in terms of weather sealing. We have 9 aperture blades, a filter thread of 77mm, and we have an overall weight of the lens of 550 grams. So this is very easy to be shot on a Leica SL3. It's not too heavy in your hands, and it is a lens which you can easily operate. It's also not super bulky, not super large. It's just the right proportions on my camera body here. Maximum magnification of 0.1 times I mentioned, and you basically can stop down the lens to f22, and you see this here on the aperture scale. You see here you're at f22, and you also have an aperture automatic mode here, and that can be dialed in on the lens. And we have overall a quite complex construction in terms of optics. We have 15 elements in 12 groups. 4 of these elements are extra low dispersion lenses, and we have 3 aspherical lenses. And by the way, the optical quality of that lens you will see in a moment in sample images. It's absolutely brilliant and was a lot of fun to shoot that lens on my Leica SL3 Reporter. We have very, very silent autofocus. Let's see. I don't think you will hear anything because there is nothing to hear, but let me focus on Jennifer. There is only the confirmation beep, which you hear. I really don't hear that motor, which is an STM motor for focusing, and that means this lens is also ideal for videography on Leica SL cameras or generally on any L-mount camera you might want to operate with this lens. And I think that's it in terms of specifications. What I want to do now is I want to spend much more time than with talking about the lens by showing you sample images, and will in this way hopefully demonstrate to you that the footage you can create with a Leica SL3 and this lens is really, really good. And I mentioned it before, I'm not typically an ultra wide shooter. 16mm is too wide for my taste. I prefer 21mm like here. But with this lens, I actually have a potential to become a fan of that focal length, which is something I would have not expected when I agreed to do that review here. So let's look into the images and then let me conclude the video. All right, I think it's time for sample images, and I'm not sure I need to show all of them, but I want to show a bunch of them. And I start with this frame here, and you see 16mm is really wide. And as I mentioned before, I'm not a big fan of ultra wide lenses. 21mm is probably the widest I typically shoot. I mentioned the 21mm Leica Super Aposomicron is one of my most favorite lenses I ever used on the Leica SL system. But here, these images I really liked. And I should also say I really enjoyed big time shooting that lens. And I showed you before that little display on the lens, which really on the screen gives a lot of information. And it's actually fun to shoot that lens. So here we also see in the upper left-hand side corner, the lens is fully recognized by the Leica SL3 as an L-mount Alliance lens. So of course we know this is a Viltrox autofocus lens, 16mm, widest open is an f1.8. And I did shoot most of these shots here when walking through Zurich downtown at f8.0. I let the ISO freely float. That's what I typically do because noise is not an issue for that Leica SL3 sensor. And you see it's really wide, and it was kind of the beginning of the blue hour. I already did catch here a lot of light, and I really liked it. If you look here, this is crystal clear. It's a very good image, and I think contrast, micro contrast, the way the colors come across, the sharpness, the crispiness of the image, it looks really good. And this is so wide, 16mm, that you can bet if you walk through a city or somewhere through the streets and you just shoot, you will later discover a lot of things in these frames, because it captures a lot based on the wide angle we have on that Viltrox 16mm lens. Next one, an indoor shot here, and this also looks really good. As I said, noise is not an issue. Of course, I post-process these images. This is shot at an ISO of 4000, but also here it looks really good. And after post-processing, you hardly see any distortions. And ultra-wide-angle lenses, they typically tend to show and exhibit some distortions. But here, this is no issue at all. Lines are straight lines, and it's an excellent lens for architectural shots. If you look at that, I think this looks really good. Another shot indoors, stepping outside of that building here. And again, very nice reflections here on the polished surface of the walls. And looks good. Here I was trying what happens if I shoot this lens widest open. So this is shot at an f1.8, ISO is 1250, and I was focusing on that flower here, still inside that building here, by the way. You see the flowers here in the background. Look at that. It's just here. And I went to the minimum focusing distance by trial and error and was focusing on that flower here. And look how sharp this is. And how nice it comes across. And most importantly, the background lights in the blurry areas of the image, they are kind of perfectly circular. Look at that. It looks really good. And it's a wide angle lens, so a lot of people don't associate that necessarily with shooting it widest open and separating foreground from background. But here, this is really a three-dimensional pop you get in this image. Sharp here, fuzzy in the foreground, fuzzy in the background. And the blurriness, the level the light is rendered here is really good. This is clearly one of the best type of images you can get in these type of shooting situations. Same flowers, but shooting in the other direction towards the exit of this building here. Focus was sitting here. Again, very sharp. Look at the colors. Look at the background lights here. This looks absolutely pleasant. And yes, you can use ultra wide angle lenses for these type of shots. And it gives you depth into the image and it just looks good. Outside, finding one of these cars, which is typical for Zurich. I was shooting this here, widest open at f1.8. But you see, if there is distance between your subject and the camera, the background will not be blurry, even widest open. So I was focusing right here at the edge of the car, but the car is almost completely, I think here, fully in focus. And you also see in the background a little bit of blurriness, but you recognize everything that's going on in the background here. And if you really want to separate foreground from background with an ultra wide angle lens, you need to go close to your subject like I did here and here. And then you get this pleasant separation of foreground and background with a super smooth background blurriness, very nice bokeh. And this was at f1.8, almost everything already sharp and in focus. Then here this was shot at an f5.6. And then you see here in the background, this is all sharp already. Let's see if we detect something that's not really sharp. Maybe here in a very far distance, a little bit of blurriness. And then at f8.0, which is enough to get everything from where you're standing to the horizon sharp and in focus. For a 16mm lens, we get this image here, and here you see this is kind of getting everything in the frame now sharp and in focus. Walking down the streets, enjoying my shooting. As I said before, when we looked into this image here, this is a very nice lens for architectural shot. Look at that building here, looks really good. Here again, I was playing with separation of foreground from background. Someone here dropped sloppily and not in a very elegant way an empty box of cigarettes. And you see this is very sharp, very crisp, shot widest open at f1.8. And again here, look at the background lights, the bokeh. What's happening in the background, really cool. I really like that lens. You can get these type of shots and just enjoy shooting it. Here, one of the most famous restaurants in Zurich downtown, Taos, a little bit of Asian cuisine. Let's continue here. You see, this is all good. This image I was shooting to demonstrate to you how close you can be to some subject, which then is still kind of fully captured in the scene. And I was standing about 1 meter away from that bench here. And it's still capturing the whole scene. So in architectural shots, this is actually what you want. And there is an image at the very end where I was standing here. So this is the headquarters of UBS, the largest international bank in Switzerland. And I was standing on the other side of the road. So probably, I don't know, 20 meters away from that building. The building is really, really large, really tall. And I was still able to capture it fully in the scene here. And that is something you can only achieve with ultra-wide lenses, of course. Let's go back to where we dropped off, walking down the streets here. Let's continue. But you see, this is nice if you want to document something. It's nice for street photography. You capture people standing in the scene like these people here. And so on and so on. Here a fountain in the old part of Zurich, walking down the alleys here. This is a famous spot in Zurich where you get a little bit of an overview over the city, like here. And again, let me crop in and you see how sharp this is. Look what's captured here. The big universities here in Zurich, you see this here. And you get a lot of details based on the excellent sensor we have in the Leica SL3, but the sensor is always the second instance who gets the light. The first element on a camera to capture light is the lens, and this lens is doing this in a very, very nice way. Here kind of a little bit changing perspective. Look at that. Looks really good here. People walking and crossing the bridge. Also here, actually here, let me do a little bit of an interaction with you guys who are watching this. So this is the biggest church in Zurich. And what perspective do you like more? So here I was focusing on catching the bridge, catching the other side on the river, and the famous church, the Großmünster here in Zurich. Then I moved a little bit, get an asymmetric perspective, having more the bridge here as the leading element and guide for your eyes. And here still the famous church. And then I walked very closely to the bridge and shooting along the bridge. So your eye is led through the image towards the church. Which of these three images and perspectives do you like more? This one, or this one? And I'm always contemplating what I like more. And I use these type of images also for clients if they need these type of shots of Zurich downtown. Is a very famous spot here. So what perspective is more pleasant for the eye? This one where you kind of have somewhere here meeting the other side of the river and the endpoint of the bridge. This one here, asymmetrical, or this one here where you really walk with your eye along the bridge to the other side of the river and then find this famous church here. Drop me a comment what you think. More images, you know, I'm going a bit quicker through these images. I don't think I need to spend a lot of time on them. I think they are all good, they're all sharp, they're all crisp. They all have nice color rendering, contrast, micro contrast. And here this is the famous Zurich Opera. It's one of the top 5 operas in the world. And I was catching here the whole place in front of the opera because 16mm, as I said at the very beginning of the sample image tour, is super wide. And we already have the evening lights here. And I think this looks really good. They have here typically a lot of chairs and people can just sit here and chill out in the evening. And I think it always has a very nice atmosphere in the evening to be at that place. Getting closer to the opera, it looks like I'm still far away from that opera building, but I was actually very close. And the angle this lens delivers in the field of view is just super wide. Then here I was focusing on the chairs. I like that. I think this is a nice image here with a pink chair, a gray chair, and then in the background I have the opera. I was stopped down here to f8.0, so I get a lot of things in the scene sharp and in focus. Actually, it looks like everything is sharp and in focus if you look at that, so it's quite nice. More of these scenes than the famous view from one of the main bridges over River Limmat in Zurich with the main churches here in view. This is St. Peter here, this one. Here is again the Großmünster. And look at that. this is almost perfect image quality. There's actually nothing I can complain about. I think this lens renders everything in front of the camera in kind of a perfect way. Look here, people standing here and doing something. I don't know what they do. Maybe they film or take photos. Evening is getting nicer and nicer. Lights in the city get more dominating over time in the evening. Then here, the Frauenmünsterplatz, which is one of the areas where from spring on you will see a lot of people sitting outside of the restaurants and enjoying the weather, which gets warmer by then. And look at that. This is just very well rendered, and it's an ISO of 25,000, which has nothing to do with the lens. That's the sensor, of course, but the lens, as I said, is the entry point of light falling towards the sensor. And this lens does a terrific job. All right, that's all I wanted to say and show. So for me, this is the very first ultra wide lens, which I truly enjoyed shooting. And I mentioned it, 21mm for me typically is end of story, and I don't like it wider in typical situations, except if I need it for architecture or landscape. But this lens I truly enjoyed shooting, and I think the footage you saw in the sample images speaks for itself. I think the image quality this lens delivers, if mounted on a Leica SL3 with that perfect 60 megapixel sensor with high dynamic range and you know, all the goodness you get out of the sensor, is just a winning team. This lens with a Leica SL3 I can fully recommend. If you liked that video, don't forget to drop me a thumbs up. Stay tuned on my channel, there's always more to come. Thanks for watching, stay safe and healthy, and of course, peace out.